Story 1. I am currently in Kailua on the island of Oahu. When my wife and I received the message, we were in bed. She asked me to make scrambled eggs with sausage, toast, and avocado. I went downstairs and made breakfast as quickly and well as I could. I gave our puppy some too because he will dine like a king if it is truly his last meal. After the false alarm, we scheduled an appointment at an ultrasound clinic to see our unborn daughter. Life is precious. Story 2. I tried to wake my roommates, but they did not respond. In denial, I walked outside to see if others were preparing for a disaster. Crowds ran from the beach to their cars. The freeway was completely blocked. And yet some elderly people who had not received a notification were watering their lawns as if nothing was happening. After 5 minutes outside, which felt like an hour, I went back inside. My roommates were awake, switching channels, and a banner across every channel warned us to seek shelter, stay on the floor, and stay away from windows. My mother in California called, crying, saying she loved me. She then called my father and my 2 sisters, saying it might be the last time they would speak to me. My 12-year-old sister said she loved me but did not know what else to say. My 6-year-old sister said, "How could Ryan be dying? There is no way." At that point, my biggest fear was not dying but the thought of the family I would leave behind. I told them I lived in a sparsely populated area, away from military bases, and that my water and food supplies should be sufficient. Mid-call, my uncle who lives on the island called. I thought he had important news, so I told my family I had to hang up. He told me it was a false alarm. I told everyone the news. That concluded the most stressful 30 minutes of my life. Story 3. My best friend is vacationing there. She crawled into bed with her 3- and 5-year-old daughters and held them while accepting that they were going to die. Her husband called from a fishing boat to say he loved them and wished he were with them. Story 4. My grandmother told us she bought meals ready to eat on Amazon when she got the alert. We had to explain to her that it would not have helped. Story 5. When I heard about it, my 12-year-old daughter called from the shelter at a basketball game where she was cheering. Neither my wife nor I received any cell notification, so we looked at each other and decided that, at that point, if something was coming, we did not have time to seek shelter. We chose to hope for the best and let the other children sleep. A coworker ran red lights to take his family to a hospital basement for shelter, where a woman was forced to give birth. I do not regret my approach to this. Story 6. I slept through it. I woke up to the second alert labeled laughing out loud. Never mind. My dad was at the beach taking pictures. He told me later that he had intended to stay there and hang out. My mother thought her phone had a virus, so she did nothing. Story 7. I am a Hawaii resident. While I did not make the impulsive decision, the people around me did. I was sleeping when the announcement came out, and the others in my house did not wake me. They said if I was going to die, they might as well let me die in my sleep. We all grew tired of the news after 2 hours. It had become annoying. Story 8. I cleared out the fridge and hid in it for 6 hours. I got an alert that the battery was at 2%, so I had no idea it was fake. Story 9. I went to Honoko to dive. I figured 100 feet underwater was as good a place as any. No boom. Story 10. My dad lives in Molokai, population about 8,000. I called him when I heard and asked. He said he did not think it was real. He said a nuclear strike from North Korea would be small, aimed at a population center such as Oahu, Maui, or the Big Island, and would not kill him. He said that if those assumptions were wrong, there was nothing he could do to stop it. He had breakfast on the lanai as usual. For mainlanders, a lanai is a deck. Lanai is also the name of another island. Story 11. I ate all the leftover lasagna in my fridge. I figured that if shit is about to hit the fan, I better load up on carbohydrates. By the way, I live on the Big Island. Story 12. I texted my mother, "I need to tell you I love you. In case everything goes wrong, please tell everyone I love them and that I've had a wonderful life. I'm very happy." She called me in a panic, and I told her I loved her. She asked if I was going to leave, and I told her I would stay with my husband no matter what. I ended the call because I didn't want her to hear me die if it happened. Then I kissed my husband and we held each other on the couch. It was a good day. Story 13. My wife and I had just sat down to eat at Cafe 100 in Hilo on the Big Island when we all received the emergency alert. I do not know if it was because we are both first responders, but we kept eating while trying to check the internet to see if it was real. Said it was not a drill, but it felt surreal. The owner sent his employees home and sat with us. I remember thinking that this is an island. There was nowhere to go, and I had already paid for the meal, damn it. I monitored the emergency services scanner and heard someone confirm it was a false alarm about 15 minutes before the official all clear was sent to everyone. So that was good. I am just pissed that the first place the government went to confirm it was false was Twitter. We had almost no internet connection because everyone was overloading the network, and Twitter is terrible anyway. Why not send an all clear on the phones as soon as possible? Story 14. It was 8:07 in the morning. I was sitting in my hotel room in Waikiki browsing Reddit when I saw the alert. I immediately turned on the news and checked Twitter. I did not hear any sirens, and there was no news. It was eerie enough to raise questions. When I went outside my door, I saw people yelling and calling loved ones. I was glad I stayed calm, but hotel staff were running out of the building. The lobby was chaotic for about 20 minutes. From my point of view, the locals seemed scared. It was their home and their livelihood. I was on an island 2,395 miles from home, so if I were going to die, at least the weather was nice. My friend who attends college on the island said the campus was an absolute mess. Story 15. All I regret is filling my emergency water containers right behind the car. So now I am blocked in the garage by 150 gallons of water. Story 16. This alert showed me that I can stay calm and that I am somewhat apathetic toward death. I am pretty proud of myself. Story 17. I got drunk for the first time in 4 years of sobriety. Oops. Story 18. I made an impulsive decision to stay in bed with my wife. There was nowhere safe to go and no time to get there. I might as well be comfortable in bed with someone I love. Story 19. My 70-year-old father ate 2 loaves of bread while hiding in his closet. He said he only regrets it because he now has to buy more bread. Story 20. Well, I don't live in Hawaii, but as someone who has planned for some of this, I would caution against resigning yourself to die. Depending on many factors, you could survive. A woman survived Hiroshima 300 meters from the hypocenter because she was in a sturdy building. The man sitting on the steps outside became a shadow on the pavement. The typical yield you can expect for a countervalue target such as a city is below 1 megaton, probably closer to 150 to 300 kilotons. If you do not live downtown, the likely center of the target, and are at least 2 miles from the hypocenter, you have at least a 50% chance of surviving. That chance increases dramatically if you take basic steps to survive, such as hiding in a windowless room. There are many factors to consider. Is the weapon set for a ground detonation or an airburst? If airburst, what altitude? What direction is the wind blowing? The fission versus fusion ratio, local geography, and proximity all matter, among other factors. The point is, do not give up, you can survive. Story 21. I regret not calling my parents. I was in total denial and only called my fiancé to ask if he got the alert too. He was working at the Honolulu International Airport, where the scene was more chaotic. He did not think he would ever see me again. All flights were grounded. He was at the Honolulu International Airport when passengers started walking off the aircraft. The captain eventually deplaned all passengers. Security and Transportation Security Administration agents were as uncertain as everyone else and could not direct anyone to shelter because there was no shelter. Some people ran out of the terminal, presumably to get to their cars and drive home. I was at Hilo Airport at the time. It was fairly calm, but some tourists were huddled together, praying or crying. We managed to get our car before all the rental counters closed. He also said that at Kona, Transportation Security Administration agents allowed all passengers through to seek shelter inside the terminal. It was not clear where to shelter because the terminal is open air. When the all-clear came, all passengers had to exit and be rescreened, causing massive flight delays. Story 22. I was in the living room changing my 2-month-old son's diaper while my wife slept in the bedroom. I heard an emergency alert on my phone a few feet away and assumed it was nothing, so I kept going. A second later, my wife ran out screaming that we were going to die. I froze, feeling helpless and unable to save my newborn son. She grabbed diapers and formula while I finished and tried to focus on getting them to safety. After 2 to 3 minutes, I snapped back to reality and focused on getting my wife and son to a safe place. We live in a small beach house with thin walls, so I thought the safest place was the bathroom in the middle of the house. I did not think to call or text any of my family on the mainland. If you had asked me beforehand, I would have said I would call my parents and tell them I love them, but I did not even think of that. I could only think about how much I loved my wife and son and how sad I was that I might not see who he would become. This experience has given me a different perspective on life and makes me regret not saying goodbye to my family. In short, I did not think to call anyone back home and could only think about my wife and our newborn son. Story 23. In the chaos of finding shelter, we decided to go to the hospital where my wife works as a nurse, thinking we could help with the incoming injured. We had about 20 minutes from the alert until impact. I pulled into a street parking spot as we neared that limit. My wife grabbed our son and ran to the hospital. I took some change and began paying the meter. My wife turned and yelled, "What are you doing?" I answered, "We have to pay the meter. Even if the world is ending, we are not savages." We did not get a parking ticket, so no regrets. Story 24. I was in a hostel. I am a male, and all of the other people in the room were women my age. We all received the text at once and looked at each other. I knew what I had to do. I awkwardly comforted them with jokes while they cried. Not very romantic. Edit. Thank you for my first gold, kind stranger. I am glad this post and my comment are still being read. Story 25. I was at a laundromat when my wife called, panicked after receiving an alert on her iPhone. I told her it was probably a mistake because I did not receive it on my Samsung phone and it must be a technical glitch. It seemed like there should have been sirens, emergency news broadcasts, and a full national or military alert rather than just a notice to users of the Apple iPhone operating system. In hindsight, I was right and felt like Joe Cool, but now I feel I should have reacted more and taken it seriously. I do not want the last moments of my life to be me saying that it is probably nothing. I was dismissive toward my wife, who was genuinely very terrified, and I regret that. Story 26. I was at work on Maui. My wife was at home with the kids, and I called to calm them down. Once I realized they were all together, I went to the third floor of a building with some coworkers and waited for the Big Bang, or whatever was to come. I told my Samoan boss that we should just hug. This way they would find us frozen in time like the people they found in Pompeii after Mount Vesuvius. Things were a little awkward the rest of the day. Story 27. I rolled out of bed and told my boyfriend, "Well, how about I make us one last cup of coffee before we die?" Then I went to the kitchen to brew a small pot. All I wanted was to do one of my favorite things one last time. Sit and tell stories with him over coffee and cigarettes in the morning. Maybe it wasn't so impulsive, but there was something about it being the last time. Story 28. My uncle and his family live in Hawaii. He had been cheating on his wife for 2 years. We all found out when he sent a mass text 5 minutes after the emergency text went out. He also wanted to clear the air before he died. Story 29. My first thought was of the excellent surfing with my 10-year-old the day before. I enjoyed some great paragliding too. I am on the island of Hawaii. Normally we are not even upwind or downwind of Oahu, so I went back to sleep. When I woke up, we were all sharing funny pictures. I only wished I had a girlfriend nearby. What a great way to end the day. Story 30. I work at a major tourist location on Oahu. Shortly after the alert went out, we began herding all of our guests onto large buses and moving them to a huge World War II bunker on the property. While directing guests where to go, I realized I had not clocked in yet and decided that if I was going to die in a thermonuclear detonation, I might as well be getting paid for it. I clocked in, then hopped a small bus with a few coworkers and headed toward the bunker. Once we arrived, we decided we did not want to die in a concrete bunker surrounded by people we did not like. So we drove to the other side of the property and spent a few hours in the back of a large valley. So I guess the impulsive thing I did was purposely avoid shelter and instead go somewhere beautiful. Story 31. I was lying in bed and told my girlfriend I loved her because there was not much else to do. I called my parents, left them a voicemail, and told them I loved them too. Story 32. I told my girlfriend not to worry about it and go back to sleep. Less than a minute later, her mother called, crying, and told her to wake up and that she was rushing home. She thought I was not scared, but if it were real, we would not be able to do anything about it. I just wanted her to be in my arms for our last moments. Story 33. I swallowed a bunch of popcorn kernels. Laughing out loud, I thought it would be very funny if people found popcorn around my burned body. Story 34. I came out on social media. I do not completely regret it, but I have lost some friends and many of my friendships have become awkward. Hello, everyone. I want to thank you for being so kind. I cannot believe I received so many responses. I promise I am doing fine. I have several good friends helping me through this. I had an idea which friends I might lose before I came out, and even though I expected it, it still hurt. Thank you for the comfort and advice. Story 35. Luckily, the only bomb that dropped that morning was in my bathroom, and it took 40 minutes to clear. I realized last night that I kept my sanity by dumb luck. I had taken the children out late the night before, so we were all home together. After hearing the stories of friends and family, I realized that if my children had been at school, or away with their mother, or if we had been driving in the middle of Maui, I would have lost my composure. I woke my 2 young daughters and told them we were making a fort in my walk-in closet, the only room with no windows. For the next 10 minutes I grabbed everything I could think of that would help. Water, juice, granola bars, blankets, shoes because of broken glass, and tablets for the children for entertainment. At one point, I decided to stop gathering items from rooms with glass windows and retreat into the closet. I put on a calm face for the girls and tried to find out what had happened on my phone. I exchanged a few texts with loved ones and took a call from my ex-partner to confirm what I had heard. I now realize I was spared much of the mental trauma because my family was with me. I was doing the best I could for them, and I did not have to make many hard decisions. I read about the anguish of separated families, about those at soccer games, shopping at farmers markets, and about people who did not know how to protect those they needed to protect or could not reach those they wanted to help. I am glad my daughters and I were spared the visuals of the panic. Later, I went to a sunset party that felt more intense. Friends embraced each other more tightly and half-joked that they were glad we had all survived. Story 36. I was in my living room sitting next to my husband and our sleeping 2-month-old. I saw the alert on my phone. We grabbed the baby and his pacifier and went to the bathroom. I started calling people who work on base to see if they knew anything. My husband was checking Twitter. We saw something about it being fake, went back to the living room to check the local news, saw the alert there, then returned to the bathroom. The sirens started going off and I sat there holding my 2-month-old, crying, thinking we were going to die and that I had no way to protect him. We got the false alarm message and my husband took the baby back to the living room while I cried for a little longer in the bathroom. It was not a major impulse decision, just a what the fuck do I do? And the best option I could think of in that moment was to sit in the bathroom. Note: I live near Pearl Harbor. I think the sirens I heard were coming from there or possibly Hickam. My boss, who lives there, heard them too. I only heard them for about 5 seconds. As for hiding in the bathroom, it is the only room in our house with no windows, although I am pretty sure that where I live it would not have mattered and we would have been dead. My husband and I grew up in the Midwest, so for tornadoes or severe thunderstorms we would always sit in the basement or bathroom. We do not have a basement in Hawaii, so the bathroom it was. It was also convenient for nervous bowel movements. Story 37. I think the good answers will be in a few years when the ones who actually made life-altering decisions leave their bunkers. Story 38. I bet there are at least a couple of survivalists who went into their bunkers and will not come up for 40 years. Story 39. I am sorry you are feeling this way. That sounds terrifying and overwhelming. Are you safe right now? If you are in immediate danger, call your local emergency number, or 911 if you are in the United States. If you are in the United States and not in immediate danger, you can call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are outside the United States, contact your local emergency services or search for a local crisis hotline. I can help find resources or talk more. Here is the edited text. I woke to people calling about the alert. I looked at my phone and read the message. I started searching the internet for answers, but there was no coverage, which made me more afraid because I thought it might be a government conspiracy to keep the rest of the world from knowing what was happening. I went to the Hawaii subreddit and everyone said they got the alert, but there was no information on whether the threat was real. Thinking about my life, I began to feel strangely accepting of my imminent death. Then I imagined my last moments slowly burning in intense pain. That thought triggered a minor anxiety attack and involuntary shaking for the next 30 minutes. Story 40. I was hiding out at home with my best friend. I decided to hold her hand and tell her I had feelings for her because we thought we were going to die. She did not feel the same way. It is awkward, and I am worried about our friendship. Story 41. Imagine there were an actual emergency in Hawaii soon. Public trust would be at a low point. Story 42. We joked at work last night that many children will probably be born in 9 months. A baby boom. Story 43. I just smoked a joint with my dad and we both said it would be the last time. We were silent most of the time. After we realized it wasn't happening, we started crying, laughing, and hugging each other. Story 44. I transferred all my Bitcoin to my best friend's account. I have not heard from him since. Story 45. I saw this yesterday. It is likely bullshit, but funny nonetheless. Story 46. This did not happen to me. My friend, who is visiting his grandfather on the Big Island, told me that right after he received the first alert to seek immediate shelter, he went down a couple of houses to where the Clintons were staying to ask the United States Secret Service agents what was going on. Apparently, they were all in gas masks and ready to go. Before the false alarm, my friend made a mimosa, said goodbye to his family, and planned to sit on the beach to watch, as he described it, the fireworks. Story 47. Some people ripped manhole covers off sewer grates and climbed inside. Many people were involved in car crashes because of the panic. Others chose to lose their virginity. Story 48. I got up from the breakfast table. My wife and 2 children were with me. I ran out the door. It was awkward coming home later that day. Story 49. I live in Kauai and we happened to be up by the dry caves in Haina, so I took a few tourists in there for cover. People were shaking and very scared. The sirens did not go off, so I thought it might be a hack. I am still not sure what happened because I do not have a television, but I am glad I was able to comfort some people. Story 50. I live in New Zealand. When I woke up yesterday, I went on Instagram and saw Max Holloway had posted the alert. I instantly thought, oh fuck. This is the beginning of an all-out nuclear war. Story 51. I did some drugs and then found out there was a no-drill missile alert, so I finished them and was paranoid the entire time. Story 52. I think the worst outcome is that people will be skeptical the next time an emergency alert is issued and they really need to seek shelter. It is like the boy who cried wolf. Story 53. I regret telling our children what we thought was happening. My oldest is 7. We explained it very simply, with as little detail as possible. We told him a bomb was coming from North Korea and about the missile defense systems, and that all we could do was hope they worked. We took away a lot of his innocence, and he is still really shaken up. Afterwards, we told him about James Mattis, saying he is smart and helps run the military to keep us safe. We could not think of anything comforting to say about the president, so my husband told him stories he had read about Mattis. My younger child is autistic and was just upset that the plans changed again. He was annoyed that the missile did not come and did not understand that the emergency message was a mistake. He felt better when we returned to our original plan to go to the beach. Story 54. I'm stationed on a nuclear submarine in Pearl Harbor. I was on watch in the engine room when it happened. The entire duty chain of command was in the reactor control room, and they told us they were going to evacuate all unnecessary personnel. We performed an emergency closure of the shielded volume of the reactor compartment so we could get everyone off the submarine and into a floating support vessel docked nearby. In hindsight, we should have put all the sailors into the reactor compartment and dogged the hatch. We would have had a strong pressure barrier and probably the best shielding against a nuclear blast in the immediate vicinity. That would have been sufficient to prevent excessive radiation exposure while the reactor was critical. Shields work both ways, so it was probably better to stay close to the shutdown reactor than to risk being vaporized topside. Story 55. My two siblings, my two cousins, and my aunt were in Kauai when they received the message. It had already been a stressful trip. Nothing went to plan. My aunt slammed a car door on my cousin's hand right before dinner, and she bought 8 pizzas for $20 because she thought it was a great deal for the 5 of them. She became angry when they literally could not eat more pizza during the week because they were constipated. My sister panicked. My aunt called my parents to check the news websites. My brother asked my mother to call her company's emergency line, and the line told them it was false. I was in a sports tournament and my parents were there watching. The venue had poor reception, so they were frantic and had to leave and stand outside in the cold to make calls. About an hour later, I went to talk to them and they told me what had happened. My mother did not begin by reassuring me that it was false. For a brief moment, I thought I had lost my siblings, that they were dead or about to die. Then she finished the story. They were okay and nothing had happened. I was not even there, and it was the scariest second and a half I have had in a while. Story 56. One of my favorite musicians posted a text conversation he had with his dad, who was in Hawaii when the announcements hit. His father went to the resort buffet because it was emptier than usual. Story 57. This will probably get buried, but I woke up at about 7:30 on Saturday morning to go check out some garage sales. I had recently gone through a tough breakup with my girlfriend of a year and a half, and I thought it would be a nice way to stay busy and keep my mind off things. I sat up in bed, took a large hit from my dab pen, and hopped in the car to drive down the mountain into town on the Big Island. About a mile down the road, my podcast stopped playing and my phone started blaring. I picked it up and read the message on the screen. Incoming missile. Take shelter immediately. This is not a drill. I rubbed my eyes and could not believe the words. I read them again before I pulled over. And as I was making a U-turn, I noticed everyone in their cars looking up from their phones with looks of horror. I'll probably never forget that. When I got home, I called my ex-girlfriend, who was working at the Four Seasons. She said people were losing their shit. I told her I loved her and how sorry I was for everything. She asked if her roommates could come to my house if they needed to, and I said of course. Then she said she had to get back to work, and I begged her to leave if we got more information. After we hung up, I went out to my back porch and looked toward Oahu. That's when I started hearing jet engine noise. It grew louder as I ran around trying to see if it was an airplane, but I never saw one. I was terrified. Last night, we spent the night together for the first time in 10 days. She slept in my arms while I lay silently in the dark. I didn't sleep because I missed that feeling so much. I didn't want to waste it by passing out. I know we aren't going to get back together. It was a fucked up day. This mistake shouldn't be swept under the rug. I feel it was a very personal violation of public trust, and people need to be fired at the very least. I hope no one ever has to go through that kind of fear and uncertainty again. I've heard stories of people I know who were sitting in bathtubs with their kids hysterically crying, people abandoning their cars and running on foot with their families. I want whoever is in charge of civil defense and the person who hit that button to be fired on the spot. Fuck them. It's unacceptable. Story 58. My wife, my daughter, and I were on Maui on vacation. We did not receive any alerts or false alarms on our phones. We only learned about the incident when a friend posted on my Facebook asking how we liked the missile attack. I did a quick Google search and saw the reports. It seemed the town we were in did not know anything about it. At the condo where we stayed, we did not hear any screaming, and we did not see cars trying to leave. It was just a normal day. Story 59. I didn't notice the alert until someone told me about it 20 minutes in, so nothing crazy for me. I can't imagine there would be many crazy stories, considering it was sent out at 8 in the morning on a Saturday. Story 60. Had sex before the nuclear explosion. No regrets. I tried to time it with the flash of the blast. Everyone came except the flash. Story 61. I had no idea what to do. So I was intimate with my wife and smeared birthday cake on her body. I had to get emergency contraception today, but they were all out. Story 62. Please add the serious tag. I am really interested in what people have to say. Story 63. I am a student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I woke up and saw the alert on my phone 8 minutes after it was sent. I am not sure whether my phone was covered by blankets and did not make a sound, but I felt a vibration like I had received a Snapchat notification. A month or two ago, I received an email from the school saying that if a missile were heading our way, it would take 10 minutes for the alert to be sent, and then we would have 10 minutes from the alert until impact. Knowing this, I realized I potentially had only 2 minutes to live, so I immediately started texting my family and friends to find out what was happening. I looked out my 14th floor window at downtown and watched everything. For about 20 minutes I was confused and frightened. Then for about an hour I felt intense relief, and for almost the rest of the day I was shaken and on edge, expecting to be killed by a nuclear bomb that morning and then relieved that I was not. After the morning madness, I went to one of my favorite spots on the east side and became very intoxicated. No regrets, other than being one of the 69,000 people who posted a screenshot of the alert to my Instagram story. Story 64. I called my sister, who lives in Hawaii, to make sure she was alive. I do not regret it. Story 65. A friend on Xbox Live said he took the keys to his uncle's Corvette and did a burnout until the rear tires blew out. His logic was, if I'm about to be vaporized, I might as well go out with a smile on my fucking face. He was beaten after the all clear and now has to pay for new tires, a new clutch, and a new rear bumper for the Chevrolet Corvette Z06. Story 66. I will tell you my online friend's point of view. He lives in Hawaii. He said, I woke up to the alarm, got some cereal, and just waited for my doom. Story 67. My boyfriend and I were visiting the Big Island and boarded a 7:30 in the morning helicopter ride to see the volcanoes. The helicopter was a tiny 5-seater piloted by a former Marine named Paul. Shout out to Paul. Towards the end of the flight, Paul switched off our internal radio to get clearance for landing back at Hilo Airport. He switched it back on and, in the calmest voice, said that there was an alert for a ballistic missile heading for Hawaii, but no need to worry. He said we needed to make a landing and would skip the waterfall. My first thought was that it was another lame tour guide joke, well rehearsed and told to every group. My boyfriend pointed at my phone, which I had forgotten to switch to airplane mode. It showed the same alert everyone else was receiving. Everyone reacted with shock, asking what was happening, whether this was normal, and noting the alert said it was not a drill. We all nervously scanned the sky as if the missile were coming straight for us. The shock sank in and I thought we were going to die on a helicopter tour. I could not decide whether it was cool or absurd. The mood went from what an awesome experience to get me off this helicopter. A fact I hope you never need. An airplane or helicopter is not a great place to be in the case of a missile or bomb detonation because the shockwaves can knock you out. Paul handled the entire situation like a pro. He landed us back at the airport, where no one seemed to have any more information. We missed the waterfall, but at least we have a good story to tell. Story 68. I posted this elsewhere earlier, but my mom and stepdad had landed in Hawaii the night before. They said they did not panic because there were no sirens. My stepdad opened a beer and got dressed for the day. Story 69. I live and work at an eco-hostel on the Big Island. I was in charge that day and we had about 14 guests. About half the people on the property were up and the other half were still asleep. I could not really process it when I first saw the message. I tried to call my mother, but she did not answer. I logged onto Twitter and only found other people posting the image and panicking. I called my father next. He answered and I read him the message. I told him I was scared and that I loved him. He said he would research what was happening. I said, okay, I love you. I have to call Shosh, my girlfriend who lives down the street. She answered immediately and said she would be there in 2 minutes. When she arrived, we stood in the parking lot holding hands while our friends stood nearby. We were all bewildered, confused, and scared. I remember one friend pressing a kiss into his girlfriend's hair, and us joking and laughing, saying, "Well, if this is it, you guys are the best." We lived in the middle of a small town with nowhere to go. Then we learned we were not going to die and moved on with our day. For those few minutes, there was a calm panic that I cannot really describe. It was not exciting, but that is my story. Story 70. I am glad no one died by suicide during the 38 minutes while waiting for impending doom. Story 71. I am a college student at the University of Houston, and I slept through the alarm. Story 72. I'm not in Hawaii, but my parents are there on a month-long vacation. My mom called me and said she loved me and told me not to sell the timeshares. It was a fun voicemail to listen to after I realized I had missed a call during sex with my girlfriend. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.